wanted to introduce you to someone who is one of the people who inspires me the most. I have learned more from Brandy Lawson than I have learned about marketing, analytics, putting yourself first and having good boundaries, and just succeeding. My success is a reflection on things that I've learned from Brandy. So I'm going to pull her on. I do have a written up description of your bio, but I just want to say I want to add my love to you first because you are one of my
beautiful
one of my favorite people in the whole world. And when I reached out to you and said, "Hey, we're doing this Amplify thing. I know you've got something," and you came back with this topic, I was like, "Bring it. This is awesome."
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here and that you thought of me. And that was a lovely intro. And well, it's going to be a little bit about left turn from the previous conversation, but still very relevant to the audience.
Yes, definitely. Do you have slides or anything?
Oh, yep, I sure do.
Okay. Down below, there's a present little icon. And if they're Google Slides, it works that way too. And there's all kinds of... There's so many ways to share.
So many things that we could do. Okay, well, it's probably safest to share the Google Slides because I was all logged on and then my internet connection just dumped. I was like, oof. But why? Don't do that.
Because it's a live stream day.
All right, so I am attempting to load my slides into StreamYard.
Okay,
and
great.
It's got all these security things that I need to make sure that I know what it's accessing.
Yes. So. The cool thing when you can load it into StreamYard is you don't have to go to a separate window. You can stay right here and see what everybody else is seeing. And that to me always makes me feel better that I'm not just showing the wrong slide or showing the wrong screen and nobody else can follow along and there's no one there to tell me that I'm doing it wrong. So.
All right. It looks like it is processing. The internet is doing its thing.
It is. Okay. Well, I can read your intro. I think I have it here because I have to talk about your shoes. Brandy is a techie, a ridiculous shoe lover, and the author of a brand new book, Hire Help. And we're going to ask you about that at the end of the presentation, if that's okay.
Yes,
Brandy's also
absolutely.
Okay, great. Brandy's the founder of FieryFX, an 11-year-old systems agency that helps kitchen and bath design businesses standardize, simplify, and innovate for more profit and less stress. She has a weekly podcast, Elevated, and she delivers actionable business improvements in 5-minute episodes. I love it. That's great. And we have
to try. All right. Well, thank you for the beautiful intro.
And I'm going to show myself out for a bit, and I'll come back in with questions.
All right, excellent. Okay, and so for anyone out there, this is kind of a interactive thing. So I am going to be keeping an eye on the chat because we're going to talk about conquering scope creep. And this can show up actually in a lot of different ways. And it's not just when the client goes off the rails, right? This can be internal. It could be in your own realm. So what we're going to start with is a question. Where is scope creep showing up for you? Now you can drop it in the chat, you can write it down, but I like to get focused here because I don't like giving information without connecting it to action. So we're going to connect this to action at the end. So the first thing to do is to start in and think about where is scope creep showing up for you? All right. If you want to drop it in the chat, if you want to write it down, just think about that. Then we're going to jump into a flashback to September 16th, 2016. We're going to go visit Brandy in the past. So in 2016, my agency was about 4 years old. And I was in a program where I was getting lots of help. We were figuring out discovery, and I had a place to go ask these questions. And I had to go beg for some help because I had my first like real big client where we had done the full discovery in the beginning. And suddenly I found ourselves 9 versions in on the design. And I was like, what is happening? What is happening? Yeah, midway through a project. Kelly, I hear you. I hear you there. So in this case, it was like getting through the design. It's so, visual review. So I reached out to my community. I'm like, can somebody please help? So obviously, I've not always had all the answers here. I struggled with this. So let's dig a little deeper. What really is the problem? So Kelly offered one way that scope creep seems to happen for her, but like, what does this happen at all, really? I found that scope creep will happen because we've lost the trust of our client. This can happen through various things. I know when I was first starting out, I would overpromise. I felt a lot of pressure to deliver on expectations that I thought that the client had. And so I would promise things and not be able to deliver necessarily. So the problem in the scope creep shows up one of the ways is like we've lost the trust or the trust has been eroded. And then they start second guessing. And so then that's when the change request or the design revision, or shouldn't the button be blue? That creeps in. Next is a profit eater, right? The more times and the more iterations you spend on the design. And Demi's weighing in here about happens near the end of the project. Oh, yeah, Demi, we're going to talk about that. It needs a profit, right? It's scope creep happens, and then you're spending all these cycles, not only on doing the thing, but defining the thing. The client comes back, they're like, well, couldn't we put a slider on? Right? Everybody died a little inside just now. Then you're like, well, how will we do that? And is that the right thing to do? And then how do I price it? It's just like, it takes the time and the money away from the project you thought you were going to have. What else is the problem? Yeah, the timeline imploder. It just blows everything out of the water. Oh, the client came back and they want to, I'm sorry, what? And we can't possibly get that launched anytime in the near future. Or it eats into the versioning. Like I said, with the design, 9 versions in. Didn't plan for that. That wasn't helping us get that website launched on time. So how else is this a problem for us? Loss of faith. So not only is scope creep a problem for our profit and our client relationship, it's a problem for the people that we work with. I actually experienced this a lot in one of my corporate jobs because an executive would come in and say, oh, we're going to do this thing. And I would be like, I have no idea how I'm going to go position this to my team who's trusted me to get us here. And then I'm like, oh, actually, no, we're going to go over here. So scope creep can really cause issues with the faith that your team has, whether they be actual full-time employees or vendors that you're working with, in you and your ability to lead them in the project. And then finally, it's just a joy killer, right? No one wants to run a business. No one wants to work on projects. I know for sure when I was reaching out to my community with that issue, I was like, this sucks. Who wants to run projects like this? I can't. I won't want to. Like if I get through this and the next one still requires 9 to 11 revisions of design, I'm not going to do this anymore. It just sucks the life and the joy out of doing the work that I actually usually really like doing. Ask Design says that their scope creep first emerges after the first review of the development site. They see the improvement and they're like, oh, excited. Yes. Okay. So we like it when clients get excited, but how do we keep that aligned, right? So let's talk about the opportunity. So scope creep happens. It's a real problem. It sucks the money and the joy out of the project and potentially the business. But what could it be like? What might projects be like if we really could wrangle in scope creep? Well, we could always begin with a clear outcome. And I know anybody who's done more than one site project gets really good at this or understands that this is really a problem if we don't do it right. So begin with a clear outcome. And with the possibilities that are at our hands, sometimes that means taking the big picture vision and breaking it down into small bite-sized pieces. When we do any projects with clients, the timeline can't be more than 6 to 8 weeks. Anything that we define has to get into 6 to 8 week chunks, because if we don't get it launched by then, stuff changes. Greg actually says scope creep makes me more money. Yes, that's, see, Greg has found the secret sauce here. It's not the scope creep itself that's the problem. It is how you handle it. So first, let's begin with a clear outcome. Define success so that we have a map to keep us on track, even if we're going to add additional stops. Like it's like when you schedule your Lyft ride and you're like, oh, but we want to now go stop, get ice cream. Lyft doesn't mind. They're going to get more money getting you there, but you have to do it in a way that everyone understands what's happening next. Creating explicit trust. So this is one of the ways that you can guide that scope creep and actually, instead of a creep, turn it into what, like a scope suitor? No. But if you can create explicit trust with your clients, you can then guide them through how to handle the expansion of the project. So project expansion, yeah, they get excited. They want to do more stuff. They can see the possibilities now. Super. Let's do that. But you have to have created explicit trust through those small deliverables, through meeting your timelines, through showing them how you are the expert so that they will trust you when you're like, oh yeah, great. That is exciting. And we'll add that here. Instead of, yeah, we'll get right on that. Also, you control the process. So even on the outset, even if you don't have anything fancy or you don't have a signature process, be on the outset just telling clients, okay, these are the steps we're taking. And then at each point, if they're kind of running off the rails, you bring them back. You're like, oh, yep, this is the step. You control the process. You explicitly set out the path. Because after all, you're the expert. Yeah, they know their business. You know what it takes to build the site, to add the functionality, to secure it. You have that piece that you're bringing to the table. So you control the process. And then everybody's in for a smooth ride. When we know where we're going and you're controlling the process and you have their explicit trust. One of the best visuals I ever had for a client who gets panicked was Pia Silva. She said at one point she was driving up this mountain road, this very windy mountain road that she'd never been on before. And her husband was driving and she's like looking over the edge and there's no guardrails. And she was really terrified and like wanted to reach for the wheel and feeling very, and like could see that other people also were driving erratically. And she was like, oh, of course. When our clients don't know the road and we haven't given them like, okay, up here, there's going to be like a hairpin turn and I'm going to go real slow and we're going to run. If we haven't like prepared them for the ride, then they kind of get like a little crazy and the fear creeps in and they want to try to wrestle back control. So having a smooth ride means setting that expectation and then having their explicit trust so that they know you'll tell them if they need to hang on or there's a hairpin turn coming. And then finally, when we do all these things, we can have more profit because there's not extra time, energy, or resources being burned in various stages of the project, when you can control the flow, move clients along to the places that get results for them, and then you can continue to deliver high quality work, continuing to have that trust, and gain it. Just builds a better relationship, right? They get excited, you tell them how we're going to do those things, we can deliver on those things, and then they keep hiring you to do more work. So how would it help you if you could avoid scope creep? And I guess we'll just qualify it as being the off the rails scope creep, not the client got excited and wants to do more things and you know how to navigate it. So how would it help you if you could avoid the off the rails scope creep? So we go back and we talk about where Demi's talking about scope creep at the end of the project. Demi, does that keep you from launching the project? Or Kelly, when they see the first visual review and then scope creep's happening there, how would it help you if you could really be in charge and wrangle that scope creep, turn it into the scope money generator? You can drop that in the chat or jot it down for you, because next we're going to talk a little bit about the ways that you can tackle the bad scope creep and wrangle it in. So if you have a clear idea in mind about how it would help you to avoid scope creep, then you'll have some specific things you can apply. Jot that down, take a moment. All right, so then the answer here is to really be the expert your clients need. The reason they came to you is because they don't know how to do what you do. They're in some other business. Maybe they're in a photography business, or they sell widgets, or they have a service. You are the expert. Be the expert your clients need. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, you build the trust. And this actually starts from the first time they contact you. So how do we build trust? Well, trust is built through consistency, expectations, doing what you said you were going to do, even the smallest things. Again, I'll borrow an example from Pia Silva, where she realized that she was eroding clients' trust by telling them, okay, you'll have that on Monday, and then not sending it till the end of the day on Monday. Is that a big deal? It's not a big deal, but those little things, because if you tell them the client will have it on Monday, they kind of expect Monday that they'll be able to do something with whatever that was, whether they need to look at it or send it on, or they're waiting for it. So she made a new principle in their business that if she said things were going to be delivered on Monday, they would be there at 8 a.m. on Monday. But that she needed to adjust her timelines then, because if she hadn't been delivering until like the end of the day Monday, then you tell the client Tuesday, you send it at the end of the day Monday, or you schedule it, right? But building trust, there are so small little things. And every one of us has relationships where we've got trust and we understand sort of intuitively how to build it, how it gets eroded. But with clients, I think sometimes we forget that this is a human-to-human relationship, and that all those things that build trust in our non-business relationships still apply here, and all the things that erode trust in our non-business relationships still apply here, and even sometimes I think more. So small things, setting expectations, meeting expectations, and if you can't, like, you actually build trust. If you said, okay, we're going to do this by this day, and the moment you know you can't meet that, you're going back to the client and be like, okay, here's the deal. This was the original plan. This came up. We're going to need to adjust the timeline. Here's what I propose. The more you are transparent with them, the more they know that they can trust you. So build trust. And this is the absolute foundation of anything that comes next. If you've lost a client's trust, you got to go back to square one. None of the rest of these things even matter if you don't have that trust from your client. Next, understanding needs. At this point, I think agencies and providers have become a lot further with the understanding needs. We get that our clients know their business, but they don't know how the website functionality or the other things that we can do will apply to their business. They only know their business and maybe what's shiny and new. And no, you can't have a slider on your website. So understanding needs. And this can look like discovery. Things really transformed for my agency when I started doing a paid discovery. Now, that does not work for everybody, and it's certainly not where I started. But when you can make space for a client to think about their business and you can pull the information out that will then paint the picture for what they actually need and connect the dots for them, one, that in itself has value because they're certainly not carving out that time and space in their business to do it without your help. And two, you might, as Greg mentioned, really discover other places that can be helpful, but it's also the context for everything that happens next. I'm sure all of us have gotten to the middle or the end of a project and the client's like, oh, actually, yeah, we're going to launch this new thing. You're like, where? We've been working together for 6 months. Could you have mentioned this? Yes, Demi says just extends the completion date. Yes. So understanding, like getting really, really clear about everything that's going on. Because the other reason the clients hire us is they're busy doing whatever job they've got. Maybe they're the business owner, maybe they're the marketing manager, maybe they're the salesperson. Like they have a whole slew of things taking their time and attention. So sometimes it's just that they forgot to say, or they didn't think it was relevant. Pulling this information, understanding the needs, creating some time and space to really dig in, however you decide to do that, is so important because it sets the context. It gives you a view into what is actually a priority for them and allows you to be able to guide them later because you already understand what else is happening in their world. All right, setting expectations. This seems obvious. Like a lot of people are like, of course I set expectations. And I'm like, but how clear and how detailed and how often are you updating them? So you need to kind of have a GPS for your clients to keep them on the route. And so this kind of goes back to the mountain, scary mountain road, and you being the driver, telling your passenger, oh, hey, by the way, up here is a hairpin turn. I know it's coming. We're going to slow down. You're just giving them the pieces and parts to, again, have that trust, but also set the expectations so they know what's coming. I talked to somebody who ran a business. She helped people plan their remodel. So she was kind of like a project manager. And she said, every time we get to demo, every homeowner thinks, we can do the demo. This is going to be easy. And she doesn't address it until at the time they're deciding, okay, well, how is demolition going to happen? And everyone's watched HGTV. It's so easy. And she, at that point, she just tries to warn them off, like, because they think they can save money. They think they can just do it. And every time it's a disaster. And I said, well, so when you start the project, you could prime them. You could say, oh, hey, by the way, when we get to deciding about how the demo is going to happen, you're going to want to do it yourself. And at that point, I'm going to remind you that it's not a good idea because insert example A, B, and C. So if you set that expectation up front, when you get to the place where you need to remind them, they're already primed for it. So finding all of those hairpin turns or scary ledges in your project can help prime the client to know and respond to your guidance at that point. So setting expectations. And then, of course, the good old, it used to be the post office, but Amazon. Be reliable. Do what you say you're going to do. Update it if you can't do it. Set expectations with clients about when they can contact you, how they can contact you, how long it takes for me to get back. So at this point, I'm not in my email all day, every day. I have already set expectations with clients that if you email us, we'll respond within a business day. if you have something urgent, go ahead and text this number. Like that's it. That's how you get a hold of us. We're reliable because we always meet those expectations. So between expectations and being reliable, I've found I had a tendency very early on to want to overpromise. I wanted to do things faster than I probably could, or I got too busy and was like, oh crap, this is not going to happen. So part of being reliable is doing a good job of setting expectations and telling clients how to connect or contact you so that they're not texting you if you're like, I don't answer text, or they're not Facebook messaging you if you're not on Facebook Messenger. Like between setting expectations, that's how you really deliver on reliability. And then finally, the biggest thing and sort of the overarching is to be the pilot. When you're in an airplane, it's a little scary, right? Sure, you're a seasoned traveler, you've flown a lot. That's great. But when you're in an airplane and there's turbulence, what happens before there's turbulence? Does it just come out of nowhere? Usually not. Usually the pilot comes on and says, I've turned on the fasten seatbelt sign because we've got some rough air ahead. And then he gives you guidance about what's happening next. The best way to, I'm going to call it channel scope creep at this point, the best way to keep your clients on the route to the thing that's going to serve their business is to be the pilot. Tell them what to expect. Tell them how to behave. Tell them what's happening now. And as things change, like when the pilot gets the plane up in the air, things could change. They may have to go a different route. But you're always hearing from him what's happening now before it happens. That's the best way to wrangle in, keep things on track, and just make the experience more joyful for everyone. Then there's no like disconnect about what's happening. Then there's no question about who's in charge, reaching for the wheel or driving erratically on the mountain road. No one wants that. Okay, so let's go back to Brandy of September 2016 with her big problem of 9 versions in, trying to figure out where I went out, because I did the discovery. I understood the needs. I thought I was doing everything right, but it was just not going well. And here is what my fellow people had to say to me. Basically, the highlights here are that the revisions, so me leading here is like when the client was asking for revisions in this point, it probably wasn't actually going to serve their business. So I needed to be the expert. I needed to step in and say, well, I don't think the revisions you're asking for will make any difference. The other piece of advice was to avoid asking them if they like it at all costs. And I was like, wait, what? And this isn't a dig on anybody who has been doing this, but it's sort of our default nature, right? We put our heart and soul and our work into this thing, and then we present it and we're like, do you like it? Because there's nothing that feels better than for them to go, oh my gosh, yes, I like it. However, I decided there's a lot of 4-letter words and I'm actually okay with any of them, but the only cuss word I know now is like. Like is the 4-letter word because it introduces opinion to a place where we're actually working towards business objectives. And I can pilot, I can set expectations, I can be reliable, and I can build trust when we're all operating on the same map. But if we start introducing opinion, we are off in uncharted jungle or other scary places because everyone's got a different opinion. That's not actually going to help us get business results. That's why context is important. That's why the map is important. I'm presenting a solution. And the reason I was 9 versions in is that I was presenting a design that was being evaluated on its likability, as opposed to a solution to a business problem. This was where things really came into focus for me. And I finally understood what I needed to do to properly be the pilot for my clients. And that is to tell them with all the love in my heart, I don't care if you like it, because it's not for you. And this, I think, is one of the hardest things for business owners to come to terms with, is that your business isn't you. And you are not the person who buys from you. And most of our job, if we're developing websites or other marketing assets that are connecting a business with a potential client, is to get the business to think like the client as opposed to just like the business. So this was my liberation. And in fact, I started using this early in the process. When you have a sales call with me, the first time we get on the phone, I'm talking through what your needs are, how we do things. And at some point in the conversation, I'll go, oh, and by the way, we've got very proven processes. And at no time, like maybe we'll do some branding work for you. Maybe we'll do some email development for you. Maybe we'll do all of these things that do have a visual element. At no time will I ever ask you if you like it, because it doesn't matter. It's not for you. And the right clients get it. And in fact, like a little light bulb usually goes on and they go, oh. And the clients that are not for us will go, but I don't like purple. Like, doesn't matter. Not for you. But this is how you can help keep things on track. So now we're going to go back to those places where scope creep was showing up and think about, is there something here you can apply? Is there something here that would help keep things on track, move things forward, or keep them from like wandering into the woods? So take a second, drop it in the chat. Let me know. Is there anything, anywhere you want to apply this? I'll also just get to the next slide here. And if so, which one of these will help most and why? Give you a minute to think about that. Drop it in the chat if you want to, but mostly writing this down for yourself, connecting one of these possible actions with that problem you were having earlier was really important. Give you another minute to kind of think about it. Drop it in the chat if you want. Because I have another question on the next slide, so I'll just let you finish up. All right, so now you've thought about where you can apply this, which one will help. Okay, so ask says, understanding needs first. Yes, followed by setting expectations. Yes, those are super critical. Oh, Peter says not to overpromise. Here's the deal. I am a bit of a people pleaser, and I really had to come to terms with the fact that I was doing a better service for my client, just being realistic up front. And they didn't ultimately care. They just needed to know when. So when I started first doing that, we'll respond to you in one business day on the email, no one cared. I thought the sky was going to fall. It didn't. So not to overpromise. That's a great one, Peter. Yes. The overpromising is I think any of us who are high achievers who want to do the thing, we sometimes get a little too ambitious. So for me, I also created frameworks around some of the things that we did so that I wasn't tempted to overpromise. Like, okay, what's our standard delivery timeline for this? Yes, over deliver only, Greg says. Amen. And I think different personalities deal with this in different ways. Some people have no issue. They're like, no, the timeline's the timeline, the timeline. And again, very early on, I was like, oh, I bet they want it sooner rather than later. Nope. I had to very much divorce myself from that and be like, okay, this is what it is. This is when we need it. This is our expectation for you. If you don't meet our expectation, then I'll just wait and then we'll reset the timeline when you get back with your review. So excellent. All right, great. Now, what are you committed to implementing? I warned you in the beginning, I'm not one for information without action. And you don't have to take everything, just one thing. What one thing are you committed to implementing from what you learned today that will bring you more joy, more profit, or more ease in what you're doing? So write that down, think about it. What are you committed to implementing? If this is something that needs some time, I invite you to open up your calendar and put that hour block or whatever on your schedule, because I don't know about you, but if it's not on my calendar, it pretty much doesn't exist. So I invite you to really take the next step that is needed to hold yourself accountable to implementing the one most valuable thing that you learned in our session today. So I'll give you a minute. Literally, I like it when I'm in a room full of people and I can, the kind bully, like, okay, no, like get your calendars out, really open, like open up your schedule, get this on your calendar, because I want you to be better for having attended here, and that's not just knowing new things. That is implementing stuff. Okay. Give you like 30 more seconds. There's Kathy. Hey.
You are amazing. What did I tell you guys?
Well, I hope it was useful and helpful. And this is where you can get a hold of me. And this is my book that will be out on Monday about having business use experts to get where they want to go faster. So this is actually written for clients. I've had a couple early reviewers tell me, oh no, my clients will need to read this before they work with me. This is now my handbook for becoming a client. Awesome. So, go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, I'm just popping some of the links down here. Definitely get that book and get on Brandy's mailing list. She writes great emails, not long ones, succinct ones. One major point that's going to make you think. You're going to take a step back and go, You're going to think about this stuff. Like if managing projects and managing clients is a challenge, which it always is, because Kadence makes building out sites super easy, right? Where the tactics are all great, but it's the strategy and the people where I think a lot of people find challenge, but also can find even more success using the tools if you can get it right. So this has been just a great session.
Thank you. If we have more questions, like pop them in the chat. Happy to answer questions. I actually have a physical copy of my book in my hand. It was crazy. I got it a couple weeks ago. It's more at my house now. But putting down the information in a framework format, I found to be one, helpful for me, but also just, you guys know all this stuff. However, when it's presented in a framework format, it gets a lot easier. And I attended a sales training the other day, and the gal's name was Sherry, and she articulated a point that I think we all know is true, but I was like, yes, of course. She said, success is not one big new idea. It's doing a lot of little things well. I was like, oh, damn it. That's right. And for me, having a framework improves my chance of doing those lot of little things right. Because then I've got a path carved out and I can be like, oh, yep, check. And I can keep doing those little things right.
Right. And when you have that framework, those big ideas, because you get big ideas, they're still going to show up, but they don't become the end all be all. They fall into the framework, don't they? Or they
Yes.
can.
Yes. Well, and you're more well equipped to execute the big new idea if you already know how to do all the little things well. Because for me, like when we did this book, we rebranded the podcast. So the podcast is in its 5th season. To even have a podcast at all required that I have a framework. Because otherwise I'll be like, but squirrel, like I get distracted easily. It's hard for me to be consistent. But to execute any big new thing that comes, having a way to break it down into those little bite-sized pieces and then chip away at it day to day, as opposed to like I'm going to just go climb the big mountain all today, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's tempting because I think here I'm gonna take this out and make just us a little bigger so we can have some of these conversations. I think we see other people do that, or the story of somebody else's success makes it feel like they just had a boom, big idea and they went viral on Hacker News, right? And that it was just so simple. That top of the iceberg thing where it just seems
Right.
like, oh my gosh, that big idea really worked for them, but we don't see the blood, sweat, and tears, the failed ideas, the things that went off the rails, all of the stuff that happens kind of in the background is stuff that we don't see. And so we think it appears from the outside like it's just the one big idea. It's just the one thing. Your book looks like it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It looks like you just sat down one weekend with a cup of coffee and wrote it. But I know didn't have it the way I did it.
I'm like, I don't think any book in the history of the world has ever been done like that. And it honestly, if you would have told me even in January that we were going to publish the book this year, I'd be like, that's hilarious. Because one, I'd never published a book before. So I didn't really have any grasp of what it would take to get there. And I think that's what happens when we embark on the new thing, the big idea, is that we're excited in the beginning because it seems cool. And then we don't know how long it's going to last, like what it's going to take to get to the end of it.
Yeah.
So without the framework, the team, the support, it wouldn't have happened. So there's no way I could have done it on my own. The only way it got done is I had a team. We also hired an expert to publish the book because I will take my own advice.
Yeah.
And I had done the bulk of the work previously because season 2 of the podcast was on this topic.
Yeah.
So many times we've already created the asset that then could be reimagined. And I don't know about you, but I have this tendency to do stuff and then be like, okay, well, there's nothing else I can do with that. So I'm going to go create over here and create something new.
Yeah.
As opposed to I've created something and it actually could have many, many, many different forms to reach the people who might need this information.
Right. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, if anybody has more questions for Brandy, otherwise I'm going to use up all the time talking to Brandy about the things I want to talk about. So, get your questions into the chat because you know how I am. Yeah, this is so great. Such good advice I think that's the thing that creates for agency owners, the scope creep and wanting to do a good job for the client and wanting to make them happy. That's, I think, creates more burnout for agencies and web developers than anything else. It's not the technology. It's not the project. It's this stuff. So if you don't get this stuff right, if you don't understand how to, I took one of your quotes, scope creep itself isn't the problem. It's how you handle it. It's not the clients that are the problem. It's how you address it. It's not the contract. It's not the project. It's not the deliverables. It's, hey, it's you, me. We're the problem.
Yes. Well, one of the favorite things I ever heard said was Brad Martineau, who runs 6th Division. He said, we teach our clients not to be crazy. And I was like, oh, snap. He's right.
Yeah.
He's right. Because no client comes in necessarily knowing how to be a good client. Our job isn't just the expertise we bring. It's the link to the client. Building that bridge, showing them how it's done. Like the pilot of the plane is never like, would you like to go over here? Or like, oh, I'm sorry about the turbulence. Like they have no control of the turbulence. They just tell you it's happening. So like,
Yeah.
having that pilot mentality was really a helpful framework for me to be like, oh, no. What needs to happen here is I need to tell them what's going on, tell them why that doesn't matter. I literally at some point had a conversation like, no, we're not changing the button color to blue. If you really think that that is going to change the outcome of this, we will test it. The data will tell us. I don't care if you like it.
Yeah.
But that is really important part of serving clients.
Right. Yeah. And I love that advice of, you're not building the site for the client, you're building the site for the client's customers. Like really, I mean, I see that so much where people are like, they're so focused on the immediate thing in their face, right? I got to get this proposal. We got to get these deliverables. We got to get our estimates. We've got to get this whole thing. And everybody forgets about who we're doing this for. Who are we trying to delight? Who are we trying to convert here? Who are we trying to build brand with? And they're never brought into that conversation. And it's so critically important to have that there, because then it takes sort of like that pressure off of all of the issues between you and your client. But that's a different thing. And you turn your focus, instead of at each other, you turn it outward towards the client. And it's like, or towards the customer, towards the end user. And there's the focus. And that's where you're going to find the magic. You're going to find what converts. And that will ultimately make your client happy when their customers are happy. And you've got conversions, you've got increased sales, you've got some actual metrics where you're like, look at what a rock star we are together, right?
Yes. I love Greg says the logo needs to be bigger. It's everyone's favorite. Well, and I think this is also a piece where, back to the airplane analogy, right?
Yeah.
If this is the first time they've taken a flight, they're nervous. They don't have control. Right. They're looking for the thing that they can control. So many times before we even, when we go into a design review now when we go into a design review, I will remind them what end result we're chasing. Like, what is success for us? Success is that we are like, I'm working with a diaper bank, and like success is that people who need what you have to offer can find it quickly and easily on their mobile phone, because that's their device. So like I try to get them in the mind frame of who's the consumer, and then I remind them, by the way, just a reminder, this is not for you. We will be evaluating this upon its applicability to the results we're trying to get. So that's the framework. And if they come in and they say, oh, well, can we just move this to left? I'll be back. So how does that help our mom find the product she needs better? Like I will, and maybe they have an answer to it. Like I'm humble enough to know I don't know everything. So my job as the pilot is to keep us on the course and to remind them about the course. So it's like, the logo needs to be bigger. Okay, well, how is that going to help us exactly with the mobile phone and them getting the thing? Then they'll answer their own question, and I don't have to be a bad guy, but I'm willing to stand up. And then I will also tell them that I'm here to be the advocate for the person using this. Yeah. So we're going to have this conversation, but I'm going to be an advocate for the person who needs to use this and get something.
Love it. I absolutely love it. So are you going on a book tour with us? What's next for you? What's next for Brandy?
So we are looking at early next year, booking out some dates to tour with the book. And I'm excited to speak to more audiences about both sides, being the expert your client needs, and for clients to be better clients. Because ultimately, like when stuff goes south, both parties don't benefit. Like both parties are harmed in the making of the bad relationship. And so I'm also looking about how to teach clients how to get better value from their engagements, to be better clients, to not be crazy. But also to be more confident, because we've all had the person come in and either had the sales conversation or got them as a client who's been burned, right? If we work in this industry, there's no client that we haven't had that hasn't been burned. And I get it. Like, they don't know what they don't know going in, and it's hard to trust somebody when you've been burned. So yes,
Right.
the book tour will be talking about those things and helping people use it to better partnerships. Somebody asked me,
Better.
so why did you write this book? I was like, because agency owners and clients try to work together and they keep effing it up. So this is going to be the guide to stop it.
Amazing. Yeah, I think, well, you know, it's like it's almost like you're a marriage coach for agencies and clients, right? It's all about relationships.
Yes.
Like, okay,
Yes,
you
it's
guys.
all about think about your other partner. But also I think there's just a little bit of ownership that comes in.
Yeah.
And even in the book, there's chapters on when things go south, right? Not every relationship is going to work out well. Sometimes we got to fire a client. Sometimes the client needs to fire us. And so how do you go about doing that in a way that, one, preserves the value that was created, and two, doesn't burn you so bad that you're not willing to do this again? Because good news, bad news, you're going to have to hire another person if you fire your website person. So yeah, right. Even how breakups, and from an agency side, most of the time we've not let go of clients soon enough because I like these people, but just because they're lovely people doesn't make them good clients. And so, like, how to structure things from the beginning so that when the end comes is a lot easier for me. In fact, I created a GTFO process so that it was just easier for me to be like, oh no, this client now needs to go. And I could tell my operations person, so start GTFO. And then, but lovingly, but then there's just steps that need to happen to offboard the client. But when you have those things already in place, ripping the Band-Aid off becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Wow. Well, great information. Brandy, where can people find you? You're on various social media. You have a podcast. Where can people follow you? I've already told them to get your newsletter.
So you can follow me on LinkedIn. That's primary, and also Instagram, because that's where our kitchen and bath people are. You can also go to Listen to Elevated, which is where you can get my podcast. So yeah, LinkedIn, podcast, Hire Help, book, Fire Effects.
Okay, great. All right. I am getting your link on LinkedIn and popping that over into the chat. Oh my gosh, I have so many windows. So many windows.
I can't even imagine. The life of the person running the live events. So many windows.
Yeah, there are. It's been a little bit of a week. We'll just say that. And we've had a speaker that was sick this morning, and Hannah, who was going to run track 2, is sick this morning. And I'm just like, but it all just kind of fell into place. So it has been a great event so far. We've got a couple more sessions, and we need to talk. We need to one-on-one one of these days. I want to learn more about what's going on with you. And I got some tea to talk about with you. So
well, this was such a pleasure. Thank you to everybody who played along. Love doing this. Can't wait to catch up with you, but thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming. And everybody go follow Brandy and tell her how awesome she is, even though.
Oh, thank you.
All right, we'll see you later.